safe space. Yeah. So I guess, shall we start?
Yeah.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
I'll give a little intro. So the reason why we're talking about this topic right now is because April is STD Awareness Month, and it's something that's very near and dear to my heart because I live with an STD. I have herpes, and I've lived with it for 16 years, genital herpes, because there's different versions. And I've recently opened up and gone public with it on social media, which has been like, really scary, but also very, very liberating. And it's brought up a lot of discussion topics and a lot of really great feedback and information. And we've learned a lot over the past couple of weeks together, just having these conversations. So we wanted to talk about it with you, our audience, as well as share some of our experience and knowledge based on what we do, me as a nutritionist and Kristen as a sexologist. So I'll also be sharing some nutritional information specifically around herpes and how we can use nutrition and mindfulness to help manage that. And then Kristen will be sharing her expertise on the topic as well.
On herpes, and we'll also be talking a little bit on other STIs.
Yeah.
And the conversation around safe sex and the dialogue and how to use different tools to be able to make safe sex more accessible and less intimidating, that conversation.
Yeah, the disclosure conversation has been a real hot topic over the past couple of weeks for me as being a single woman living in Bali. So it's been a really interesting experience and learning process. So we'll be talking about that as well. So I guess what I'll do is I'll just give a little bit of background about my experience with it and how I've been sort of dealing with it personally. I've had herpes for 16 years. I got it from my second boyfriend ever, who didn't know that he had it, so he said. And he didn't disclose, and it was a really horrible experience. I was 21 years old, and I was young, and I had no clue. I thought my life was over. And since then, I had the following years after that, I had a number of monogamous relationships where I really didn't have to deal with my herpes diagnosis because they were totally fine with it. And it was never really an issue for me because I never would get outbreaks. I had my one main big outbreak, the first primary outbreak. But then after that, for about 10 years, I maybe had another outbreak, maybe 5 times. So it wasn't really too much of an issue until I went through a time of high stress, long-term stress in my life where it really started coming out a lot more, maybe once a month. And I was really, really struggling with it. And it's like, okay, I have herpes, but why is this coming out in the way it's coming out? Something is happening inside of me, within my emotions, within my mental health that is affecting this and causing it to come up on a consistent basis. So I've really learned through my journey as a nutritionist, through the research I've done, through school, I've even written papers about it, how to manage and suppress it naturally with food, because there are foods that trigger herpes and there are foods that support herpes and prevent these recurring outbreaks from happening. And there's foods that we should obviously avoid. So I wanted to educate about that as well to you.
Super useful information.
Yeah. Herpes specifically is you really want to focus on maintaining and boosting and supporting your immune system because it is a virus. So it will come up if your immune system is low and you're not taking care of yourself. So immune support is the number one. Number 2 is nervous system support. Herpes comes up for me in periods of high stress, like talking flight or fight type of stress. So you really want to try to be mindful about how you're managing your stress levels when living with herpes, because that's when it tends to rear its sneaky head, I'm going to say. And just taking good care of yourself, making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you are listening to your body, and just taking the time, like really stepping back. I know whenever I get an outbreak, that's when sirens and bells and whistles are going off. My body is telling me to slow down. So really taking the time to listen to that.
It's the same with the outbreak on the mouth. For me, it's like if I feel tingling happen, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I really need to rest.
Yeah.
And look after myself.
Slow down and start thinking of ways you can eliminate some of that stress in your life. So those are kind of the main things that trigger recurring herpes outbreaks. So specifically with food, how we can, I guess, manage and suppress herpes naturally with food is there are 3 macronutrients. And macronutrients are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So we can focus on including those in our diet to help prevent and maintain the outbreak situation and help prevent them, heal them faster, and then help prevent them from happening. So some of the carbohydrates are whole grains like quinoa, buckwheat, and amaranth, if you can get those in your area. They provide an excellent source of zinc and iron, which is really good for herpes. Sweet potato is also really good. Anything with vitamin A, as well as vitamin C. Sweet potato, red peppers, I'll get into that a bit later, but sweet potato is also really good. And who doesn't love sweet potato? I do.
Yum.
Oh, so good. So it's helps prevent herpes outbreaks and helps to natural heal the outbreaks if you do have one. So the vitamin A is really important. And so basically all of those, like I said, help to, I'm just reading from my notes. I'll bring them over so it's not as weird. Where am I here? Yeah, it's to help inhibit the HSV replication, and it enhances cell-mediated immunity, as well as reduces the frequency, duration, and severity of herpes outbreaks. I'm reading this from my pathology paper that I wrote in my nutrition school. I wrote a whole paper on herpes and nutrition, and I actually just posted a blog about it on my website, so if you're interested, you can read more about it. So that was the carbohydrates, so grains, sweet potatoes. Good fats are really important because it helps the skin heal faster, and it also helps minimize the shedding period of herpes to help the virus heal faster. So omega-3 fats are really important. Polyunsaturated fats are really important in helping reduce the inflammation and pain associated with herpes outbreaks. So some of those include coconut oil, avocados, salmon, other fatty fish, olives, extra virgin olive oil, grass-fed butter and cream, small amounts of dairy products, and cheese. Who doesn't love cheese? I mean, some of us can't eat dairy, but some of us still love cheese, don't we? Okay, and the last one is protein. So good quality protein and lean sources of meat, such as grass-fed beef and chicken, are high in lysine, which is an amino acid that helps prevent and heal the herpes virus. So red meat is also an excellent source of vitamin A, which again is also very important and helps prevent outbreaks by boosting the immune system. So those were the macronutrients that we should include in our diet. And this is just like just scratching the surface of some of these things, because like whole fruits and vegetables, whole sources of any kind of food are super, super important. Leafy greens, like anything with vitamin D, vitamin A is also super important. Some of the micronutrients that you want to include, which includes like the vitamins specific, are vitamin C. That helps boost our immune system. We all know that. Vitamin D3 is also really important to prevent recurring outbreaks. Probiotics really helps with replenishing your gut flora and keeping your gut healthy, because when our gut is healthy, our immune system is healthy. As I mentioned before, lysine is an antiviral and helps heal herpes outbreaks. and lesions. Zinc is also really important, as I mentioned before, so it helps inhibit the HSV replication and enhances cell-mediated immunity. So like gets deep down at a cellular level and helps to boost your immune system. Vitamin A as well, as I've mentioned a couple of times, and vitamin E to apply topically to any sores that you have both on your lips and on your genitals. And I mean, there are just so many other things that I could talk about, but we'll be here all day, so we can talk about this another time. But like some of those things are herbs that help as a immune booster, antiviral and nervous system relaxant, and essential oils that help heal the herpes lesions and clean them, and as well as like helps you relax. So we can touch on those topics as well at another time. Foods to avoid, that's also really important. You want to avoid anything with the amino acid arginine in it. So it makes herpes outbreaks worse, and you should avoid anything with arginine in it. And foods that include arginine are raw nuts and seeds, bananas, chocolate, and cacao, which is like so awful for me because whenever I get a herpes outbreak, I want to have comfort food, and my comfort food is chocolate, but I can't eat it because, yeah. Anyway, and wheat and corn. No, carob's okay. Yeah. So you want to really avoid those types of foods that include arginine. So you want to have a higher lysine content to arginine, and you also getting an L-lysine supplement is also really good to prevent the herpes outbreaks. You also want to avoid alcohol, caffeine, and any kind of recreational drug use because that suppresses the immune system. As well as like coffee, for example, is a stimulant, and so that can negatively impact your immune system. And sugar is like the worst thing that you can eat. And during our talks, you'll hear me always talk about how sugar is like the worst thing any of us could eat because that really negatively impacts our gut health. And as I mentioned, when our gut health is off, our immune system shuts down. And so we want to really keep that gut health happy and healthy. Oh, that was a lot.
Thank you.
And again, like this just scratches the surface of things that we can talk about. So I'll be posting more information about different herbs and supplements and essential oils and other types of foods that you can eat. And I'll keep posting about that on my Instagram, Facebook pages, as well as my website that I continuously update with blogs and different information about that. Herpes, of course, is near and dear to my heart because I have lived with this for a long, long time, and I'm learning to manage it and suppress it naturally with what I'm eating, with the foods that I'm eating, and also being mindful of avoiding the foods that boost or that encourage herpes outbreaks. So, yeah, it's important to be aware of these things and be informed when you live with herpes, both with cold sores on your lips and cold sores down here.
Mm-hmm. And so, thank you so much. It was super
informative. A lot.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was thinking, you've got your blog post, so maybe after this I might share my story, like a swipe up, so you can access the blog post easier. And yeah, that will help. So if you want to just talk a little bit, do you want to go into disclosure and your experience? Maybe we'll just go into your disclosure and your experience, disclosure and your experiences, and then maybe we can go into other STIs and the conversation around safe sex in general.
Yes.
As like a rough guide of how we're going to go with this talk.
Yeah. Okay. Disclosure. Where can I start? So I'm single and I live in Bali, and living with herpes in an environment like this has been a big learning experience for me because it's a revolving door of beautiful people, and you know, most of the time people just want to have casual sex and just a bit of fun, and I'm noticing that when I disclose to people, I'm getting rejected a lot, and a lot of people have given me, and partners and potential sexual partners have given me the feedback that they would rather not know. And it's really caused a bit of controversy for me in my own mind, because I really believe in disclosing. I believe it's the right thing to do. Because for me, like, I have a guilty conscience, and I just can't live with the potential consequences of not disclosing. But at the same time, like, I'm human, and I also want to be seen as somebody that just doesn't have herpes. I want to be seen as a woman, as a sexual and sensual being, but also I want to make sure that I'm being careful about the other person and their health, and just knowing that I'm healthy. So it's been quite a controversial topic to talk about, and it's been a really difficult experience for me. I went through a period of time where I believed 100% in disclosing before having sex with anybody. But then there was a time where I didn't disclose, but I made sure that I was safe and healthy and protecting the other person as much as I could. And that's also ruffled a little bit of feathers, because it's not until I'm personally in the situation can I then decide if I'm going to disclose or not. I've had men tell me, like, if it's going to be just a casual relationship or a casual sex partner that you might have sex once or twice and you're never going to see them again, like, why bother having the conversation? But at the same time, now that I'm speaking very openly and publicly about it, like, what if I don't disclose and then they see my Yoni nutritionist social media profile and then they see that I'm talking about it? So it's like, yeah, it's been an interesting journey, I'm gonna say.
Let's talk a little bit about the facts of herpes, like, for example, statistics, and what are the transmission rates, or how likely is it to spread herpes from one individual to another, and why this is such a controversial topic.
Yeah, it's
what it actually is. Like, it's a disease rather than an STI, so
it's a virus. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a skin condition. Mm-hmm. And it is something that once you have it in your system, in your DNA, it's there for life. And I feel like people just really have a hard time accepting that part of it, that it's like they think it's a lifelong sentence when it's not. Like, you can still have a very happy and healthy sex life when you live with herpes. It just happens to be an inconvenience sometimes. So it's a skin condition, and how it's passed is skin to skin contact. If I have a cold sore on my lips, I don't get cold sores on my lips, just down there. But if you have a cold sore either here or here, and you have sex with somebody or kiss somebody while you have this cold sore, of course you're going to give it to the other person. But if you don't have a cold sore on your lip and you kiss somebody, you're not going to give it to the other person. But if you don't have a cold sore down there, the chances of giving it to somebody else are much less. However, if you start to Google the information on the internet, it'll tell you that the virus of herpes can shed without you knowing. So you can pass it to somebody even if they're wearing a condom, and even if you're not having an outbreak. So
what does shedding mean?
So shedding means the virus is active within your body, but it's transmitted to somebody. It's like kind of like a snake sheds its skin.
Oh, like on the genitals?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can pass that to somebody, when you're asymptomatic. I mean, I don't know the statistics about that and what the rates are of that, but from what I know from my experience is I've had a lot of monogamous relationships where I wasn't using condoms, and I have never given it to anybody before. That's just my experience. But like I said, if you look online, you'll see all this information. But that's just not, like, I know that I have herpes, and I try my best. I am very mindful and conscious about it, but there are some people who don't know that they have it because of this shedding. And it doesn't come up until either they go through a long period of stress in their life or something triggers it. Will they know that they have it? So it's like, it's a really mysterious virus and disease. And statistically, 1 in 4 people have herpes. So it's very, 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 very common. But just most of us have the DNA embedded in our bodies. But we just don't know that we have it only until we get a sexually, like STI screening or STD screening. Do we know that we have it? And you have to really, actually, you have to ask your doctor specifically for the herpes test, because it's not included in any of the other STI, STD tests.
And there are 2 different types. Do you have to go into
Yeah.
a little bit?
So there are 2 different types of herpes. There's the HSV1, which you can get orally and genitally. And then there's the HSV2, which is only genitally. So I personally have the HSV2 strain. And everybody who gets cold sores up here has the HSV1 strain. So that is the major difference. But you can still get, if somebody has a cold sore on their lip, which is HSV1, goes down on the person, on their partner, then they can pass on the HSV1 virus. But it just has to be an active cold sore.
Mm-hmm. And can HSV2 be transmitted from genitals to mouth? Or just genitals to genitals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So both can be transmitted.
Yeah, I'd have to look more into that. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not like a specialist. Like, I know as much as I know, and and I can just share based on my experience. But I'd have to it's actually a really good topic to bring up and write about, because a lot of people aren't educated about the statistics and the information about herpes, and I think that's where the stigma comes in, is everybody's afraid of it because they're just seen as something that's so dirty.
But it's, like you said, just a skin condition.
It's a skin condition.
It's more the stigma and the psychological effects that it has that makes it such a huge problem.
Yeah. And it's like when you get a cold. Like, you get knocked out for a couple of days, you have a cold, it sucks, but you rest, you take care of your body, you deal with it. And you can give the cold to somebody else if you have a cold, but when you don't have a cold, you're not going to give the cold to somebody. So it's kind of similar. And I also think, like you said, it's psychological. And I think with the genital version of the herpes, why there's such a stigma is because you can't physically see it. So it's like the unknown that people are afraid of. When somebody has a cold sore, it's not as scary as somebody with genital herpes, because it's just like, oh my God, it's on my genitals, oh my God. It's like a different, well, it's the same thing. Like,
And I think it's also the stigma that we're more afraid of than the actual disease. Like, now I'm going to be labelled as somebody with herpes, and I'm genital herpes, and I'm going to have to share that with people, and I'm going to face rejection, and it's like, we're having to disclose something about our sexual activity that can make us feel judged or labelled. And another really interesting thing that you brought up was language around STIs and STDs, with clean and dirty and positive and negative. So if you wanted to talk on that a little bit more. Yeah.
I've had a couple of people in my life recently refer to having an STD as being, refer to not having an STD as being clean. And then I said, well, what's the opposite of clean? And it's dirty, obviously. So I'm like, so that's basically saying anybody living that has an STD is dirty. And, it's like, there are so many circumstances, like, it's just so unfortunate that people see it that way, because it's not. Like, I got it from my second boyfriend ever. I wasn't being sexually promiscuous and not mindful about, like, it wasn't like that for me, and it's like that for a lot of people too. It's just, it happens, and it's unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world, and it's just the stigma. It makes it seem so scary and dirty, and it's really, really difficult to have these conversations, because even in the herpes positive, sexual positive community, a lot of people see this topic as being so black and white, where you have to disclose and you have to do the right thing and you have to do this and you have to do that. Well, as somebody who lives with this and is single and wanting to have sex, I believe in disclosure. But again, like I've mentioned, honestly, like there have been times where I haven't disclosed, and it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult sometimes. Yeah.
I'd like to jump in
Yes.
and just talk about how when we had a discussion about it and the statistics of 1 in 4 people having genital herpes, the fact that, you know, I've made love with around 60 or 70 or so people, and no one has ever disclosed to me that they've had genital herpes. And so, you know, that means like 20 or so people that I've made love with have had genital herpes statistically, and no one has ever disclosed to me. And the same thing with the fact that, you know, I have oral herpes, and I've never felt the need to disclose to lovers before giving them a blowjob or kissing their yoni. And so I just find it really interesting that as soon as it turns into genital herpes and the topic of genital herpes, that it becomes it becomes quite controversial and black and white, even though the similar risks are involved with oral herpes. And even though, you know, in my experience, and I actually had this conversation with a lot of other people who have made love with many people, and they've said the same thing, like they haven't been disclosed to. So, you know, I really would like to take a moment to honour Adrienne, that she has not only been honest and open with her partners and experienced rejection, but she's publicly talking about it and helping to shed light on something that's both controversial and stigmatized. So yeah, thank you. Do we covered everything with herpes? Do we want to see if anyone has any questions on herpes, or should we go straight into other STIs? And
I just want to add that for me personally, I'm just talking from my experience, and from what I have learned, disclosure and not disclosing and not disclosing is, for me, what works is disclosing at the end of the day, because the risks of not disclosing are greater than the risks of disclosing. I would rather get rejected than know that somebody's angry at me because I didn't tell them about my herpes condition, or I never ever would want to ever give anybody this, and I want to make sure that my partners have a choice. That's what works for me. Mm-hmm. And I really try to be mindful of that, and I'm trying, whenever I get into a sexual situation, I make sure that I am feeling good in my body and that I'm healthy and that everything is good in my yoni before even having sex, and I practice safe sex. But for me, I just want to share that disclosing is very important still to me, and I believe for me it's the right thing to do. So if anybody else is out there in the same situation as me, just, you have to listen to yourself and your body. Every situation is different, and you just have to do what's right for you. If you're not ready to disclose, if you're not feeling good in your body, if you're not feeling good with what's yourself and the way that you can tell people, you just need to be really mindful of that as well. It's all what is right for you. Mm-hmm. I feel like I've just gone on a rant. Because
like, we did a poll, and it was something like 60% of people said that they feel like disclosing is the right thing to do, and 30-something% people said that they feel like it doesn't matter if you're practicing safe sex. So that's just kind of like, it's really interesting to see the public's opinion, and there was a lot of really strong opinions in personal messages. And like I said at the beginning of this talk, I feel like it's really important, unless you're in the position, to be really mindful of that your opinion is that it's an opinion. It doesn't mean that it's truth. Also to be open to the idea that context can really change, and we can be fluid in our experiences, and and to have compassion for each other, that we're all doing the best we can.
Yeah. And some people just, some people aren't ready to learn about it. Some people aren't ready to deal with it. And, it's unfortunate, but that's their choice, and they have the right to that choice as well. So, I figure when I say my herpes diagnosis and situation is like a filter. Filters out the ones that aren't meant to be in my life right now. And the people who can stick around, it really builds a next level, like a different level of trust right from the beginning. And that's also pretty magical when that happens. So, yeah.
And Adrienne works one-on-one with people, helping them if you are experiencing this kind of like rejection and confusion over disclosure and how to go about it. Adrienne works one-on-one with people to support them through this process. So maybe at the moment you're feeling that you can't disclose it, or you're not even making love, or you're feeling disconnected from sexuality, or whatever it is, you've got somebody here that is a herpes ambassador.
Yeah, I'm a herpes activist with an activist group.
So you've got support, and definitely send her a private message and connect with her.
Yeah,
she'll definitely be able to help you.
Yeah, I'm doing
probably already
support calls.
That.
Yeah, I'm doing herpes support calls, and I also offer my services as well to work one-on-one with people who are really struggling. It's just the same as I have. Like, I feel like the psychological impact of dealing with herpes because of the stigma is actually worse than the physiological and physical part of the virus. So if you do need help or support, I'm here, because I've been through it and I've worked through it, and I have a lot of really great tools that I can share that would help other people as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now maybe we'll just touch on a couple of other STIs. Something that I'm super passionate about are the asymptomatic STIs that can lead to infertility and damage to the womb, also to the lingam, but for women it's a far greater risk. So I personally had chlamydia about 3 years ago. I got tested after having unsafe sex, and it was the first time that I'd been told to come back in for my results, and I was super nervous, like, what the fuck have I done? I've had so many tests over the years. I've been really, either if I've not used a condom, then I've gone and gotten tested pretty much straight away. And then it was positive for chlamydia. The doctor was amazing. She was like, it's just 2 tablets and they're antibiotics, and it will be gone, but just make sure you have effective partner treatment, because what can happen a lot is, especially with asymptomatic infections, is that we have repeat infections because our partners aren't treated properly, and then we get it back, and then we don't realise that we've got the STI again. And so both chlamydia and gonorrhea are something around 75 asymptomatic in women and 50% asymptomatic in men. Asymptomatic meaning that you don't see any symptoms from the infection, and what can happen is, if it goes left untreated, the infection goes from the lower reproductive tract up to the upper reproductive tract and begins to create scar tissue on the fallopian tubes and on the back of the uterus. So say the uterus is like this, leaning forward, with the ovaries kind of back here a little bit, and the infection comes on the back side of the uterus. It actually begins to fold backwards and fold in on itself. So it's kind of like goes backwards and then completely folds in on itself because of all the scar tissue making it contract. and then on the fallopian tube. So what happens is, because the sperm is such a tiny cell, it can reach the egg, but then once it's fertilized and comes back down, it can't get through the fallopian tube anymore, and that's where ectopic pregnancies occur. And it's like it's such a huge deal because of, you know, it can also lead to pelvic inflammatory disease, but it's such a huge deal because it's not, you know, it's one of those things where maybe we're in our teens and it happens and we're not even thinking about children, or maybe it happens when we're in a period of our life where we're like, I'm never having kids. But when that option is taken away from us, it can be really, it can affect our mental health so much and cause a lot of grief for women, or for those of us that have a womb. So being really careful with safe sex or regular testing even in partnered relationships whenever you can. Like, you know, I had a sister that saw me who had contracted chlamydia from her partner who had cheated on her, and so it was left untreated for a really long time, and she had irreparable damage done to her uterus, and she was in her early 20s, and she wanted to have kids one day. So, you know, while adoption is another option, and it's just like it can cause a lot of damage, and it's one of those things that we're not taught about. So we know that chlamydia can lead to infertility, or gonorrhea can lead to infertility, but we're not really taught the why and how that occurs. So, you know, if you just kind of get that image of the damage that it causes to our womb, it can be a good motivator to make sure we're taking care of our womb. So yeah, with gonorrhea, mainly asymptomatic as well. Now there is a strain that's not as easily treatable, that can also be contracted in the throat. So if you're having casual sex, it is a really good idea to even use a condom while giving oral sex, because you can contract it in the throat and then you can pass it on from the throat to the genitals. And this one's not as easily treatable. So those two. And then when it comes to HPV, I had the HPV vaccine when I was young, and, you know, as much as there's so much controversy around vaccines, I'm actually grateful. I don't know how else it's fucked up my body. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't, I don't know, but I've never had the virus, and it's so common, it's so easily transmissible, it's skin on skin contact without an outbreak, and it's the most common STI. Chlamydia is another really common STI, but apart from chlamydia, HPV is the most common. And prevention and protection from that, I mean, the best prevention for me has been the vaccine. I'm not promoting vaccines, so let's not go there. But at the same time, the fact that it can be transmitted so easily, and it often leads to abnormal cells on the cervix for women. So it's really important to protect against that. So can I jump in and share that? Just 1 second. I'm on a roll. So Sorry. If you are going to have unprotected sex with somebody, get tested first. If you can't, you can't wait, and if you don't want to use a condom, get tested first, and that can create a really beautiful relationship between your potential sexual partner anyway, because you're getting to know each other and all the rest of it, but you're also seeing a mutual respect shown for each other's body, and so you can go and get tested together, and if there's HPV with one of you, then you can go from there. But just using a condom and then taking the risk of HPV transmission, it's a less of a risk. Using protection and avoiding skin-on-skin contact, even if you leave clothes around the groin area, but just getting tested before making love, it just changes everything. And when somebody does that for you, it's like, okay, you're decent, you're worth my yoni and my time. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
It was just on the topic because I had HPV and I was getting abnormal pap smears, and I had to have the skin on my cervix burned off, and I had to go in for surgery to have this done, because with the abnormal cell growth on your cervix, it can lead to cervical cancer, which can cause all kinds of other issues. So I just wanted to share that too, like that I had a scare around the same time. Yeah, it's super common.
Like
super
so many
common.
of the women that come in to see me have had to have surgery and have to go through that really traumatic experience.
Yeah, because it is that is traumatic. Like being put out, being given anesthesia really fucks with your whole body. Mm-hmm. But a friend of mine did ask me about the nutrition part of HPV and what you can do to prevent that from happening. And I have to do a bit more research on it, but I think maintaining like the pH of your yoni and inside of your vagina is really important. Maintaining good gut health is also super important. Yeah. And
was she talking about once you've already contracted it? Or? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because she was afraid that the cervical cells would grow mm-hmm. more and more that would lead to cervical cancer. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so how to maintain optimal health while having the virus.
But it's the same. It's basically like, and for any STI, it's making sure that you're eating whole foods, really eliminating the processed shit. Like, get that shit out of your body. Limiting the alcohol, caffeine, if you still like to drink coffee and drink alcohol. Just make sure you're doing it in a balanced way, not overdoing it. The smoking is also really bad. Like, developing good habits and good eating habits as well.
And especially like if you have to take an antibiotic if you've contracted gonorrhea or chlamydia, like the gut health, the balance of after having antibiotics.
Yeah.
Awesome. So should we talk about conversation, how to have that conversation before making love? So, I know when I was younger, I was so shy about asking for a condom, and I was so shy about asking for testing, and over the years I've obviously gained a lot of tools in how to do that. And so for one really easy way to have that conversation about condoms is just to have condoms on you, to be the one, not leave it up to the guy to have the condoms, but just, if you've ever had a sexual experience and the guy's brought out the condom, and just remember what that was like. For me, it's like, oh wow, he respects me and he respects his body. You can flip into the other mindset, like, oh, he's got something, oh, he doesn't trust me. But if you concentrate on the more positive mindset of, we're being responsible here, and that's the same for you. And if you're met with resistance to using a condom, which happens, having just like really clear boundaries of, I understand that maybe sex for you and for me as well is more pleasurable without a condom, but I really need to respect my body. I really don't want to deal with the potential outcome. You may very well have no STI or STD, but I also don't want to fall pregnant, or whatever it is that you want to say. Just having that conversation, it's okay. Like, it can be, you can just use the terms, like the things that I've just said now, or find your own terms. Be prepared for that moment, and having that boundary to look after your body, because it's so worth it, and prevention is the best cure. And that's fucking cliche, but it's so true.
So true.
And then the conversation around testing. So for me, I say, when's the last time you got tested? And have you had any sexual partners since? Unprotected sex since? Sometimes they have to think, and sometimes they don't know, or sometimes they've never been tested, and then you can be like, well, I haven't had unprotected sex since I last made love, but I'm happy to go and get tested again with you. And just put yourself in there, and so you're both responsible, you're both partaking in safe sex, and it's like it's no big thing. And the first couple of times it might seem like really uncomfortable to say this and unsexy, but soon it just becomes part of your dialogue and your vocabulary around sex, and the way you interact with your sexual partners, and it becomes no big deal. And in fact, it's fucking empowering. And I've been met with respect over and over again because of it. and I feel so good, the fact that I'm looking after my body, I'm looking after my sexual partner's body, and I'm making wise choices. I'm not a fucking crazy young woman anymore, or teen that's just going out and being reckless with my body and my choices. And I find that really sexy in a person, really beautiful.
And it's how you say it too, not necessarily what you say. Like if you come across, and it does take practice, and with practice, when you come across as confident and knowledgeable and educated and aware of the facts and experienced, it really, people are like, oh, it really does help. It also, it's healthy for the relationship, the intimate relationship that you're going to have. It builds that trust, but it also helps to break down the stigma.
Totally.
If with somebody that has an STD. But for people who don't, that conversation really does go a long way. And with today's day and age and online dating, and with just swiping, everybody's being so disposable and easy to come across, it's so important to have that conversation, because you never know. You just never know.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would love to hear these conversations happening more and more. And if you do have an STD or you've experienced an STI, to openly talk about it, so we begin to break down the stigma. It's not about normalizing STDs and STIs. We want to prevent them. We don't want them. And the thing is, the more we destigmatize them, the less they're going to occur, because we're actually feeling comfortable to talk about safe sex and bringing wisdom and awareness. And the statistics show, with the people that are more likely to be infected, or the populations that have greater STIs and STDs, are the lower socioeconomic and lower educated people, because they just don't have access to knowledge, and what that results in is unsafe behaviour, unsafe patterns and risks being taken. And so the more we can talk about it, the more educated we can become, the more we can educate others. It's not going to happen, and we're not going to have to, people aren't going to have to experience what Adrienne has to experience as much, and we're going to be able to have educated, safe sexual experiences.
Yeah, it should be part of the good safe sex practice, is talking about it. If you can have sex, if you can get into somebody's genitals, you should be able to have that conversation.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So
the consequences are
it can be really. Oh, and I actually wanted to touch on HIV. So it's not commonly known that HIV is now, if you're being treated, undetectable and untransmissible. And so there's a huge stigma surrounding HIV, and especially in the gay community. And this can lead to alienation of this population of people living with HIV, and I feel like a huge part of destigmatizing it is just the knowledge of the fact that they can't give it to anybody anymore if they're being treated, which, especially in Australia, it's free. It's the access to the medication is free. Nobody is transmitting it because they're all being treated, and so I feel like it's really important to bring light to that. So if you are operating in communities where HIV is a thing, and you've found yourself judging, or you've found yourself, because HIV positive people don't have to legally disclose anymore, so if you've found yourself judging people for not disclosing, just so you know, that's actually telling someone that they need to disclose, because if they have cancer, they can't give cancer to anybody, so they don't have to disclose that. And it's the same is true for HIV. We have a huge stigma surrounding HIV because of what it was. I feel that it's really important just to share, even if you just share that with one person, that, oh, did you know that if someone's being treated for HIV, they can't actually give it to anybody. It's just, not common knowledge. So just wanted to touch on that one.
Yeah, I mean, the more we talk about it, the more we have these conversations, the more we are open about it and share this information with all of you. It's like it just kind of starts growing roots and spreading. And that's what we want, is we want that to happen, to be more accepting of it, not normalizing it, but also being aware of the fact that a lot of people have STDs. It is not as uncommon as we think. It's just because nobody talks about it. Mm-hmm. It's very personal. It's very shameful. It's
considered dirty,
but
hugely stigmatized.
It's hugely, like, when I opened up about it, it was incredible how many people started opening up to me about it. I was just like, wow, like, it's really unbelievable how many people have experience with this. So yeah.
So should we go into questions?
Yeah.
All right.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, anybody have any questions, feel free to write in now. We're not going to mention names, so...
Yeah, totally anonymous.
Hello to those of you that have said hello.
Hello in Australia.
India. Florida.
Cool.
Thanks for getting up so early, 5 o'clock in the morning. Hey, Rose. Aww. So nice.
Oh, we've been on for almost an hour. I swear I could talk about this topic for forever.
Oopsie.
I guess just to summarize it from a nutrition perspective, when you live with an STD, any kind of STD, you just want to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to boost your immune system, relax your nervous system, keep your gut health healthy, and try to relax. And just trying to include the foods that I mentioned. If you missed that, you can check it out on my blog that Kristen will share. But just wanted to summarize that while we're looking through the questions.
Nice. So I've got one question that says, one quick question to double check one more time. But then I don't see anything else.
It's right there.
Oh, okay. So my boyfriend has mouth herpes, but it only flares up every couple of months. So as long as it's not flaring up, he can't give me herpes when he goes down on me. Right?
No.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Perfect.
Yay!
And that's all the questions. Hey, Lukey. You got any questions on your...
No.
Cool.
Somebody said hello from Poland. Cool. Such an international audience. Oh, we have 1 minute and 25 seconds remaining.
We nearly maxed out our time. Okay, let's say bye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Much love to you all.
Yeah, for who joined us and listening to us for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just so much to say on this topic. We're both so passionate about it, and we'll talk about it again at another time, I'm sure. But join us again next Sunday, where we're going to be talking about our periods and our cycles. It's also a passionate topic for both of us, because we're both bleeding today.
So we'll have lots of material for you next week.
Yeah, thanks for joining, everybody.
You. Lovely to connect. Talk to you soon.
Love and healing vibes.
Love you. Ciao.